Everyone, Dr. Kuniak here. I want to talk a little bit about basic attending skills, that first session, first meetup, all that sort of stuff. Since you're going to be practicing in the coming weeks, in your uh, multi-participant, your triad groups, uh, I feel like it's helpful if you get kind of oriented to the questions to ask, the ways to focus, all that sort of stuff. So one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is it's going to be a little bit awkward because and I'll show you this video clip at some point in class, but you know, we're asking you to do a lot of things at the same time, and then we're asking you to also be natural, and that's just not possible. I realize, the realities of those asks. But at the same time, if you can get yourself to kind of think about this process ahead of time and then just kind of roll with it when you're doing the work in your practice sessions, that's going to be ideal. So we'll see if we can get there. For starters, consider that a first meeting. A lot of times you're not going to get any information ahead of time from the client. So I know I've had some questions come up about the idea of, am I going to give you prompts? Am I going to give you like a case example to overlay for your work with your fellow participants? And so no, in this case, what I would like you all to do, and I know I've mentioned this already, is to invent yourself, whether it's sharing information about your own personal experiences as the client, or whether you want to create a character that you represent yourself as. That's fine, but do your colleagues a favor and try to come up with some stuff that you can share that you're comfortable with sharing as though you were a client, whether it's real or made up. That said, the initial session is a lot of, when I'm working with my client, when I sit down and we finish filling out all the initial paperwork and all that sort of stuff, I just ask, so what brings you in? That's as simple a question as you can get to. Um, I know some folks who do a let's talk about what brought you in, and then I also want to hear about something good that's happened since your call. That's more solution focused oriented, and it's fine, but it's getting the client to think about, like, okay, so what what's bad, but also let's talk about something that is working too. Depends on your style, depends on what makes sense to you. If you've seen your own counselor, think about what those conversations looked like at the start of that counseling experience. If you think about what you would need from a counselor, if you were to go to someone, that's a great way to think about what it is that you need to do to represent yourselves. As I think about what it means to be a good counselor, I think about a person who's going to be non-judgmental, who's going to try to do their best to make me feel comfortable, who's going to focus the session on my needs. And so what do you do when you start? You have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So what's the beginning? Tell me what brought you in. Let's talk about the things that are, rise up to the top for you. I've had clients then say to me, like, well, I don't know where to start. And I'll say, well, start at the beginning. When you decided that you wanted to come into counseling services, what were the things that were in your mind that you wish you could kind of change or make better? Let's talk about those a little bit. We can work backwards and forwards. It's okay. Um, it is, I think, appropriate to take little shorthand notes. I would not write a progress note during session. Maybe in the future, for you. I know I do my progress notes kind of live as I'm in session, because I'll just do it as like short bursts of thoughts, and then I'll quickly reorganize it into a little bit of a narrative at the end when I'm done with my client. But, I think it's appropriate to take some little notes, things that stand out to you, words and phrases, stuff like that, to kind of keep track of. Um, if they're talking about depression, then you write down about depression. If they're talking about anxiety stuff, whatever the case may be, you know, phrases that make sense to you, and then try to draw a line of best fit. So they're talking about this incident that happened, this incident that happened, and this incident that happened. Is there anything that connects all of these? Is there a theme that's present in all of these that maybe I should kind of keep track of with the client? Make a couple quick notes to keep track of yourself, but just ask, what brings you in? Can you tell me about that? Then when they're sharing their stories, it's, you're talking about a mother. Can you tell me about your history with this person? Or can you tell me about, you know, some bad times and some good times with this person? What is it that you want to achieve? What's the end result? Um, you can use a formalized assessment tool if you want to. I really encourage you, though, to just kind of ask questions, because When we talk about assessment, there's formal tools, and that's great. Those are so useful in your sessions, but I don't need you to practice in this class reading an assessment. I have another class for that. But in this class, I need you to do more subjective assessment. So they say something, and how does their posture change? Um, how does their tone of voice change? You don't need to have an answer to any of these things, but just noting when it comes up can be helpful to get you thinking like, oh, they shifted in their chair. I don't know what that means yet, but maybe they're just uncomfortable, but let's pay attention to this. So I'm going to give you a specific theoretical, and I know we're not doing theory in practice in our basic skills class, but I'm going to give you a particular theoretical framework that I want you to kind of keep in mind in these early sessions as you start to practice your skill areas. In Gestalt counseling, they would talk about when you're sitting, the posture that you take is eyes open to see, ears open to hear. So you want to kind of, to the best of your abilities, square your body, sit upright in your seat. Like think about how you would know you were being listened to if you were talking to someone else. If you, as the counselor, then mimic those things that you would need to see, then it's likely your client is going to be feeling like you're hearing them too. But the most important parts are, don't be looking around the room and distracted away. Like all of us are going to move our eyes here and there sometimes. I as I'm thinking, I shift my eyes to do that, to get the thoughts to bubble up. But generally speaking, try to make eye contact with them, try to note what's going on. I mean, we're in little squares, so you're limited to those sort of things, but you can still see if a person shifts their body language in some way or another. And ears open to hear is important because it's not thinking about what the next thing you're going to say is, it's really listening to what the client is giving to you. It's okay to listen and pause for a moment to reflect. That is going to feel uncomfortable at first. It's going to feel like they end and you need to say something back, but you don't have to. You can take 5 or 10 seconds or more. 5 or 10 seconds is going to feel like a lifetime. I understand, but it's okay to take 5, 10, 15 seconds and just say, think about something you said there is really standing out to me. Just give me a moment. That's fine. Just maybe it's quick enough that you don't have to say anything, but it's okay to just kind of sit with it for a moment and think about what is it that they just said and what is salient and important about the where they came from. You can, if you're a person who does need to speak through it, you can say like, okay, so I heard all of this. We're going to get to this particular skill, but I'll give it to you now because it's helpful to work with. But you can utilize the listening and repeating back skill. It's a form of summarization. So you can say, so what I'm hearing is this and this and this and this. Did I get that right? Okay. So what I'm picking up is, and then give that back to them. It's a way for you to it I think helps inform that you are in fact listening. It helps the client to feel that, but it also helps you to organize. So it's dual purpose. Very basic skill, very useful. Um, but I think those are some areas of focus that I'd encourage you to work on in those early sessions. Is think about what a counselor ought to do in your opinion. Like, what are the behaviors that you would expect to see? Do those. Think about what it looks like when someone is really attending. They're not looking down and taking notes the entire time. They're looking at you. They're making eye contact. They're squared up in the screen and paying attention. Um, Use those attending skills to communicate to your client that you're listening, and just use the first session or so to gather some information. Get some good questions asked, and gather some data and start considering what makes sense about what this person is bringing to you. Hopefully that gives you a good start. If you have any questions that come after you've watched this video, please email me so that I can add those to my list of things that I want to try to cover in future videos. But I just wanted to get you to start thinking about, what are the skills that I'm going to bring to each of these sessions and what is it I'm going to practice. Again, hopefully that was helpful, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.